Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Runewords. Today, we're going to be looking at a new rune word for the Warlock, specifically because it is a Warlock-specific rune word. It is known as Vigilance. Vigilance is interesting because it offers a lot of opportunities to potentially get like different setups. In fact, it's going to be one of those rune words that really depends on finding a good base. Because if you don't find a good base, then you can't make it into an amazing rune word. It has some modifiers on it that do vary, so 20 to 40 life, 20 to 40 mana. The all res does vary, which is a big one, from 25 to 35, and the enhanced defense varies from 75 to 100. The rune word itself is pretty simple. It is 5% chance to cast level 10 Ring of Fire when struck. 5% isn't really the greatest, and level 10 isn't the highest level of the ability. But Ring of Fire is a kind of an interesting ability for a couple reasons. Number one is it knocks back enemies that it hits, so it has a ingrained knockback. And it goes all around you in an entire circle. So it's kind of a defensive mechanic is essentially how this thing is worked. So for instance, if you have a monster that walks up to you and he tries to beat you to death, there's a very good chance that you could potentially have an accidental or an incidental cast, essentially, of the ability, which would, of course, give you the Ring of Fire, which is going to knock them back. Now, I'm kind of high level, and I don't even know if he can hit me. So we're going to simulate having it go off, right? And if it did go off, it would look like this, right? So if on a 5% chance, if they hit you, you get the level 10 Ring of Fire, which is going to come out, and it's going to knock back targets, and it's going to do some fire damage. If you do have the synergies for Ring of Fire, so if you're running not the skill itself, so the skill itself does not do anything, but if you have the synergies of Flame Wave and Apocalypse with 20 points in each, you can get the synergy bonuses, which would apply to level 10 Apocalypse. And I mean, Ring of Fire, and I can show you what that would look like. So let's go ahead and do a quick reset real quick. Bink. I have reset. Why you no do what I ask you do. Oh, I didn't boot up from the correct file. That's why. Well, I'll take this as a learning opportunity to teach you something. So if you want to set up your single player, not your online, if you do this, it won't work for online. You're going to make an additional shortcut to your exe file on your desktop. This is only when you're going to run only for single player. You're going to go to properties, and in the target location at the very end after the quotation, you're going to type in -enable respec. This is going to enable you to be able to respec your characters infinitely offline. When you do this, however, it will not let you log into online anymore, but that's fine. For offline purposes, it's actually a really good thing to do because you can sit there and respec your abilities over and over again, test them, play around with them, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it would be like if you had a level 10 fully synergized Ring of Fire coming from the armor. That way you can get an idea of how much damage it would be doing. Now, to use this enable respec command, once you have points spent in both trees, at least 1 point in each tree, you're going to alt click and it'll reset. So we're going to go ahead and just reset real quick. Let me go slap some points in real quick so we can actually put our equipment on. And to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to put points into Ring of Fire until it hits level 10. So that's what the base damage of this ability is at level 10, right? Not very good, 64 to 79 fire damage, so it's not amazing. If you're utilizing this on any character other than a character building into the fire abilities, it's only going to be utilized as a knockback for enemies, essentially. Now, if you put in the synergies, however, which is Flame Wave, and you also put in the synergy for Apocalypse, you should see the full damage of a fully synergized level 10 Ring of Fire, which is going to be 320 to 395 fire damage. Not the most amazing in the world, but it's there. So, as you can see, you can synergize the ability on the armor, but it is stuck at that level that it casts at. It's interesting as a defensive mechanic because obviously it's going to help keep the monsters away from you when you do get hit. But at 5%, it's not going to go off often enough to be something that's overly reliable. It does have 10% faster run walk, which is actually really nice. Having run walk on gear other than your boots is actually amazing because it can potentially open you up to use other boots that don't have run walk on them. They have 30% faster block rate, which is really cool. Faster block rate is a stat that actually doesn't exist very much at all within Diablo 2. And seeing it on a new rune word is actually kind of exciting because there's very few items with faster block rate on them. Guardian Angel Templar coat is one that has faster block rate, as an example, and that's one of the very few items in the game that has faster block rate that anybody can use. Most of the faster block rate items are usually shields, and they're usually class restricted. And then, as you can see, this codex does technically count as a shield because it has 33% chance to block. It also gives 6 to 10 magic damage. Now, as far as I understand, that's a base effect of the item. So when you look at a book, you notice that the books have this fire or magic damage on them as a standard, kind of similar to the necromancer heads that have poison damage as standard. They also come with skills, so you can find books that have skills on them, which is also innate. On top of this, it also has 40 life, replenish life 7, 28 mana. We got 5% to maximum poison resistance, which is kind of nice. And then there's the all res that varies between 25 to 35 all res. The recipe isn't cheap enough that I would sit there and re-roll it for more res because gull runes are not exactly the cheapest things in the world. Later on in a latter season, you might have a lot of gull runes, but you also might have a better item at that point as well. So it might not necessarily be something that you want to craft. Now, the real meat and potatoes of what makes Vigilance a really good rune word, in my opinion, is this. So when you look at an item and you see the skill bonuses that you could potentially have, you can find a book that has, say like +3 to the specific skill that you're looking for. You can also find a book that gives you points to a skill that you don't actually have. Like, for instance, if I wanted to get access to the demon spell Consume, which is down here, I would have to spend 1, 2, 3, 4 points to get down here. But maybe I don't want to spend 4 points to get down here. And instead, maybe I just want to, get it for free, right? I could find a book that has Consume on it, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it, and I could save myself points. We call these point saver tomes. And point saver tomes in general are really good for grabbing a skill that you just want to have access to, that you don't necessarily want to, put a large number of points in. On top of that, you can also, of course, beef up your skills. Like, for instance, if you were a summon character, you could get a book that has +3 Summon Goatman, +3 Demonic Mastery, and maybe also +3 Blood Oath or something. And then you could make a Vigilance in that, and that would make a really excellent Summoner Vigilance. Or if you were a offensive character, like you were potentially using Echoing Strike, you could find one that has +3 Echoing Strike, maybe has +3 to your specific hex that you're using in combination with your Echoing Strike, and then maybe some other thing like a curse or something that could potentially be useful to you, like Lethargy or Rancor. In this way, the thing about this is it's super customizable, right? It's very similar to the Necromancer heads where you would look for a +3 Necromancer, +3, summon. +3 summon skeleton, +3 skeleton mastery, and maybe +3 to bone armor or something. And then you'd make a splendor in it for +1 skills, and you'd have +4 total. Now, the interesting thing about these is they can be re-rolled. So one of the things that I will tell you about is a recipe that a lot of people don't seem to know about, and it's something that I usually try and let people know all the time. So in the Herodric Cube recipes, there is a recipe to repair a crude item. So if you find a book, like for instance one of these, and it's crude or cracked or broken, what you can do is you can repair it with an L rune and a chipped gem. What this does is it sets the quality of the item to 1, level 1, and then it re-rolls the whole item, including the skills. Now, this is a common tactic for assassins with claws. It's also a common tactic for necromancers with heads, and now it is a common tactic for the warlock with their books. Now, what can you re-roll on a book that you do this way? So if you find a crude book and you re-roll it with this recipe, what can you get? Well, the answer is anything between the levels of 1 to 10. Or 12, sorry. So Miasma Bolt would count. Lethargy would count, and Rancor would count. So these 3 tiers right here, let's just call them tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. Anything in the first 3 tiers will potentially count toward the reroll, which means that if you reroll a book and you're going for a summoning book, as an example, you could potentially get one that has Summon Goatman, Demonic Mastery, and Blood Oath, and it's going to limit it to these 3 tiers, which is going to make it much more likely to roll those specific skills. Another thing that particular recipe does by setting the level of the item to 1 is it limits the number of maximum sockets to 3. But the thing is that the superior codex only goes to 2 sockets, so that limitation does nothing. In other words, every single crude, cracked, or broken book that you find as you're leveling up, you can potentially reroll with an L rune and a chip gem to see if you get good skills. If you get good skills, you can potentially turn it into a splendor, or you could turn it into a vigilance, and you could make yourself an interesting item. And that's pretty much it. I think this is a good addition to the game. It's a fairly cheap rune word. I mean, it doesn't require a burr rune, for God's sake. But a gull rune is not exactly the cheapest thing in the world. Many people consider the gull rune to be a mid rune because it does come from the Hellforge. It's the highest rune that you can get from the Hellforge. And ever since Mosaic was added into the game, which it has actually recently been removed for temporary rebalancing, Gull rune has kind of like been bumped up to a high rune again. It's one of those runes that's kind of like in between. It goes up and down. So right now, I would assume that Gull rune is probably more in the mid rune territory, with Mosaic being removed the equation, which means that it's probably going to be on the cheaper side this upcoming season, which is on February 20th, I believe. You can check the list. I think that's pretty much it for this item. I think it's decent. It's not going to be the most amazing thing in the world. It could be an endgame item if you find the perfect codex with like +3, +3, +3. But I think more often than not, you're probably going to be relegated to a +2 shield instead, which depends on what you're doing. Theoretically, if you have a 3/3/3, it could be better than a spirit, which is only +2. So keep that in mind. As always, I'd appreciate you guys and gals watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe button if you are enjoying the content. I have a lot more Reign of the Warlock content coming, and hopefully my voice will be better by then. As always, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe button, and keep watching.